Even with blockbuster-sized budgets, a massive crew, and an ultra-talented cast, getting a movie finished can be an excruciating exercise in perseverance. What we end up watching in the cinema is often a result of compromise, where things didn't go as planned and the director had to get creative on the fly. But then there are filmmakers who simply wouldn't accept no for an answer, and as such took frankly ridiculous measures to ensure a scene was shot and executed exactly as they imagined. These 10 movie scenes, whether an ultimately minuscule snippet of the movie or a huge grandstanding set piece, all could have been pulled off in a number of different ways, and yet each director opted to do things the hard way for a more impactful end result. Whether navigating the frustrating mundanities of filming or committing serious resources to pulling off a minor cinematic miracle, these scenes all exist as they do because the director dared to go the extra mile, and then some. So without further delay, let's take a look. I'm Amy from What Culture, and here are 10 movies that took extreme measures to shoot scenes. 10. A real 1.5-mile freeway was built. The Matrix Reloaded. One standout set piece in the second Matrix movie is the exhilarating freeway chase, during which Morpheus and Trinity attempt to get the Keymaker to safety. Though most viewers likely assumed that the bulk of the scene was shot on a green screen soundstage, that's not actually the case at all. Rather, armed with a $150 million budget, the Wachowskis decided to build a real, functional stretch of freeway on a decommissioned naval air station, just to the tune of about $2.5 million. That's just the practical cost of construction though. When you factor in the extensive VFX employed in the final version of the scene, it clearly ended up costing so much more. Even so, the fact that they did it the hard way where possible, rather than just keying everything in after the fact, is an impressive commitment to practical filmmaking. 9. A fall guy was hired to take the blame for illegal filming in Tokyo. The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift. Though the third Fast and the Furious movie takes place almost entirely in Tokyo, the overwhelming majority of production was actually filmed in Los Angeles, California, largely due to how difficult it is to obtain filming permits in the Japanese capital. But director Justin Lin nevertheless went to Tokyo with Universal's go-ahead and attempted to shoot a few small scenes, albeit without permission from the local authority. Though Lin was able to capture all the shots he needed, he very nearly found himself spending the night in jail were it not for some preemptive intervention from the studio. They had taken the precaution to hire someone to pretend to be the director in the case that the police got involved. Paying a local to spend the night in jail rather than letting the director head to the slammer and potentially derail the shooting schedule is some pretty smart foresight. 8. Bryan Cranston was flown private, housed in an Airbnb and disguised on set. El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie. One of the big surprises in last year's El Camino Breaking Bad movie was the brief flashback cameo from meth kingpin Walter White, played by Bryan Cranston. Though many suspected Walt would indeed appear in some sort of capacity, writer-director Vince Gilligan went to uncommon lengths to ensure Cranston's role wasn't leaked or spoiled ahead of time. Cranston filmed his cameo over a 2-day period in July 2019. He was allowed use of a private jet to fly to Albuquerque and had a bag placed over his head immediately on disembarking the plane, at which point he was driven directly to set in a blacked-out car. Furthermore, in order to prevent extras leaking Cranston's presence in the diner scene, all of the background actors were in fact crew members and their families. Though Cranston was only in Albuquerque for roughly 36 hours, to avoid him being spotted at a fancy hotel, he ended up staying at an Airbnb instead, which he likened to almost like a witness protection situation. 7. The entire movie was shot secretly in Disney World. Escape from Tomorrow. 2013's indie horror film Escape from Tomorrow attracted a ton of press after it was revealed that the film had been shot almost entirely on location at Disney World and Disneyland without the company's permission. The film, a surreal indictment of the suggestion that Walt Disney's World Resort is the happiest place on Earth, required director Randy Moore to employ extensively sneaky filmmaking techniques to get the 90-minute movie made. Scenes were tirelessly rehearsed in hotel rooms before shooting started, and because the secretive nature of filming didn't allow any conventional lighting equipment, Moore also had to chart the path of the sun weeks ahead of time. The cast and crew entered the park in smaller groups to avoid suspicion, and avoided using professional-looking camera equipment in order to blend in with the tourists. Even once principal photography was completed, Moore opted to edit the film in South Korea to avoid Disney finding out. After its surprise premiere at the Sundance Film Festival, many suspected Disney would take legal action against Moore, but they instead decided to just make little mention of it. The film quickly faded into near obscurity after its October 2013 on-demand release, though remains an impressive and provocative cult curio all the same. 6. Wolverine's cameo required tracking down a backup film negative. Deadpool 2. One of Deadpool 2's most hilarious moments is its array of credit scenes, including the outrageous sequence where Deadpool travels back in time to the events of X-Men Origins Wolverine and murders the much-loathed Barakapool version of Deadpool. The brief scene also includes a quick cameo from Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, courtesy of archive footage from the movie itself. However, it nearly didn't come together due to the difficulty in tracking down a backup of the original film negative. "We had a dick of a time trying to get the original footage," said Ryan Reynolds. "The movie was shot on film, not on digital, so it was harder to get. For a while it even looked like they may have to ask Hugh Jackman to come in and reshoot his old scene," which Reynolds claimed probably would have made the whole thing even funnier. 5. Producers shipped 60 tons of Utah dirt back to Hollywood for reshoots. The Conqueror. Dick Powell's 1956 epic, The Conqueror, is infamous for not only casting the totally ill-fitting John Wayne to play Mongol legend Genghis Khan, but also the fact that many exterior scenes were filmed downwind of the US government's nuclear tests. As a result, a statistically improbable number of the cast and crew ended up being diagnosed with cancer in the decades that followed. Notably, director Powell died of cancer just 7 years after the movie's release, whilst Wayne passed from stomach cancer in 1979. The on-location Utah shoot was difficult, resulting in reshoots being scheduled back in Hollywood. To ensure the continuity, producer Howard Hughes went to the extreme length of having 60 tons of Utah dirt shipped to the reshoot set, with the US government having assured the production that the nuclear tests were entirely safe. Well, not only was this untrue, but The Conqueror went on to be hated by the press and viewers alike, and continues to be regarded as one of the worst films ever made. So much effort for such atrocious results. 4. The iconic car chase was shot without proper permits. The French Connection. The French Connection boasts one of the greatest car chases in movie history, as Detective Jimmy Popeye Doyle takes pursuit of an elevated train on which a hitman is attempting to escape. The scene is so brilliantly crafted in its intensity and technical wizardry that one would understandably assume it was completed with extensive planning and cooperation from New York City authorities. But as it turns out, filming far exceeded the bounds of what it was permitted to, in turn allowing the chase to spill into roads occupied by regular civilians. Although the director did indeed get the go-ahead to clear traffic for 5 blocks in every direction, and even control the traffic lights, this simply wasn't enough, and they continued to film the chase into sections with real traffic and pedestrians. Aside from the famous near-miss with the woman walking a baby carriage, most of the crashes were unplanned collisions between stunt cars, and at one point a civilian's car even got hit, forcing the production to pay repair costs. Despite the messiness of the shoot though, it remains one of the most nerve-jangling car chases ever filmed. 3. A photographer secretly took pictures inside the United Nations HQ. North by Northwest. A significant sequence in Alfred Hitchcock's masterful 1959 thriller takes place inside the UN General Assembly building in New York, but after reviewing the script, the UN refused to grant Hitchcock permission to film in and around the building. As a result, the shot where protagonist Roger Thornhill arrives outside of the General Assembly building was filmed in secret, with a camera crew filming it from across the street with a long lens. If you look closely, you can even see a regular civilian do a double take as he walks in. Whilst the scenes set inside were filmed on a soundstage, Hitchcock nevertheless went to dubious lengths to accurately recreate the interiors of the UN building. The production hired a photographer to secretly take photos inside the UN, which were later used as reference materials for the film's production designers. The end result is certainly convincing enough, even if Hitchcock did risk getting one of his crew members arrested. 2. $1 million was spent shutting down Times Square for 3 hours. Vanilla Sky. Vanilla Sky's memorable opening scene sees protagonist David Ames walking up to a bizarrely deserted Times Square and taking a brisk jog through the empty expanse. The sequence, which runs almost exactly a minute in length, was achieved for real without any visual trickery and required the production spending $1 million of its hefty $68 million budget to get the tourist hotspot shut down for 3 hours on a Sunday morning. In fact, the only visual effect employed in the entire scene was to remove a news ticker which referred to the US presidential election that actually took place mere days before the scene was shot and would have immediately dated the movie. As wonderfully bewildering as the scene is, that's a hefty chunk of change for such a small part of the film. 1. The director told NASA they were filming a documentary, not a found footage film. Operation Avalanche. This conspiracy thriller follows a pair of CIA agents who infiltrate NASA to investigate a Soviet mole, only to find themselves caught up in a plot to fake the 1969 moon landings. Incredibly, the film's NASA set scenes were actually shot on location at NASA, with director Matt Johnson concocting the ruse that he and his crew were student filmmakers making a documentary about the Apollo program. In turn, NASA not only granted them access to their facilities, but even put them in touch with real NASA personnel, whose interviews actually appear in the final movie. Johnson said the shooting was incredibly tense. They had to drop in and out of a mission control tour and disassemble modern signage in rooms only to make sure it was back and perfect before rushing to rejoin the group unnoticed. And because that wasn't crazy enough, Johnson also flew to London's Shepperton Studios and undertook some guerrilla filmmaking at the studio's 2001 A Space Odyssey exhibit. No matter what you make of the film itself, it's hard not to admire Johnson's sheer ballsiness in conducting such a sneaky, potentially disastrous shoot. And that brings us to the end of our list of 10 movies that took extreme measures to shoot scenes. If you have any more crazy scenes in mind, then drop them in the comments below. And remember to check out whatculture.com for more lists and articles like this every single day. I've been Amy from What Culture, and I'll catch you next time.